Adventuring Party for the first week of April 2021. This week, it's the episode where the campaign setting is made up and the dice don't matter. The Adventuring Party, discussing tabletop-related gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Graham.
I'm Owen.
I'm Liam.
And I'm Shane. And we're here today to play a little game. Game called Whose Game Is It Anyway?
Do I need dice? I didn't bring dice.
Do we have to do impressions?
No, it just have to be very American. So, this is one of my philosophical theory of gaming nonsense topics that I come up with every so often because, I do too much thinking and I don't drink enough to stop. So, this is the idea of what parts of your RPG game are defined by the game master or storyteller or whatever have you. What parts are defined by the players and what parts are defined by external sources? So I could reveal those external sources now, or we could leave ourselves in suspense to see if we want to have them come in with a top rope with a steel chair after the episode.
I guess it's one of those, you can bring a horse to water, but if he chooses to do the backstroke in the trough instead of drinking it, it's difficult to stop him.
I've designed this really gritty, dark game, and people have decided to do slapstick elements in it.
Yeah, well, I don't mean it in a bad way, but what I'm saying, I suppose, is it is a collaborative effort to some way, shape, or form, because, regardless of what you write, your players have free will, or at least some free will. Otherwise, you'd just write a book. You wouldn't actually have an RPG session.
Well, now some GMs do that. Let's all hold hands and I'll guide you through my pre-written adventure. And don't you dare try and derail it.
But that doesn't sound like any fun, Liam.
Well, there can be great fun in attempting to derail it, like if you have a more adversarial role with your GM.
Doing the backstroke in the water trough, just spitting the water out like you're a little fountain.
Yeah. I'm a seahorse.
What I'd like to start by saying is Whose Line It Anyway started as a British radio show, then it became a British TV show, then it got an American adaptation. So, just for full disclosure and accuracy.
Yeah, sorry, my bad.
I
don't think I'm brave enough to do a British impression these days. There's too much tension in the air.
Far too much tension. The thing is, it is a collaborative process, ultimately role-playing. But you'll have people who will some people will stick very closely to canon. Will be like, no, I'm not doing anything that's not explicitly in the rules or explicitly in the setting. I'm not deviating from it. I'm running this game. It's this setting. That's how I interpret things and have fun. I don't like making up my own stuff for a variety of reasons. It's not in there. Only the stuff that is if it's official, it's in there. If it's not official, it's not in there. And that's how we go. And they're not very open to a bunch of changes. And couldn't we have magic ponies? And someone saying, this is a cyberpunk setting in a terrible city dystopia. Why are you insisting on playing a My Little Pony? Specifically a My Little Pony. Not a cybernetically enhanced pony. A My Little Pony.
But I could be a robot pony, Alan. I just look like a My Little Pony. And I could be a cyber being that just looks like a My Little Pony. And that would totally fit.
Ultimately, the GM has got the big gavel in this one, because I do say, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But for example, if someone goes, I want to play a My Little Pony, the GM can go, well, you're not going to, In the same way that if someone goes, my character is inexplicably blue, the GM can go, no, they're not. The best you can do is you think you're inexplicably blue, but no one else in the universe will react to you in that way.
I guess there is a little bit of balance there, though, because, if all of your players are like, look, we all just want to play Little Ponies, you're the only one who wanted to play Cyberpunk. So, we're playing this Cyberpunk game. Can you give us a bit of leeway? But then, I guess you've ended up in a bad situation anyway.
But these, I suppose, are extremes. We'll explore the... let's
I
go
played this con game. Literally.
Sure.
I literally played this con game.
But Owen, extremes happen sometimes,
They do.
But most of the time, they don't. Most of the time, we fall within the swelling center of the gentle bell curve, where everything is more or less sane. But like these things do happen, but most of the time it's a situation where you as a GM go, I have this preconception of what I want to do, and then you find the players are trying to explore areas that aren't necessarily that. And it can be that extreme, and because it's a 3-hour con game, you put up with it and you leave. But if it's an ongoing campaign, it's harder to kind of grit your teeth and bear it.
It does raise a good point. So stuff like what character types or can you be? It's one of those weird edge cases where it's sort of assumed that the GM can set parameters before the game, but once the game is started, suddenly there's this big taboo about, oh, no, you can no longer alter anything about the characters. No longer can the GM declare that you're secretly an elf or that your father is actually Satan. Oh no, that must all be.
I don't think that's true. I had a player once who wanted, he was playing a Jedi and he wanted to have a blaster, and I was like, you're not allowed to have one. Jedi don't use blasters. And he was like, can I integrate one into my lightsaber? And I was like, no. And I just said no repeatedly. And he was like, I want to have a gun as part of my Jedi. And I was like, well, you're not allowed. And that was literally what it came down to. It just came down to me going, you cannot have one. You can, if the circumstances dictate, pick one up off a fallen foe and use it. You should then get rid of it.
And do a quote from a certain movie.
And then Ezra Bridger cut your legs off, Jared, Graham, completely. Cut the legs out from under you.
Well, this was pre-Ezra Bridger, but the point there was that did not fit with my conception of how that was supposed to work. And it's one of those things where you're like, you can't just say no. I'm like, I can, I will, I will continue saying no. I am very clear on this.
I guess that's fine once you're going along that kind of thing. You're playing Star Wars, you're running Star Wars, and things are going Star Warsy. But I guess I've had it at con games where I've sat down for what I thought was a serious kind of strategic game, and then suddenly it goes waka waka waka.
But that's bait and switch. That's always bad. Well, it's nearly always bad.
Yeah, but it's two sides of the same coin, though, isn't it? Like the GM, I don't think has total free reign to. I know they're running the game, they're giving them time to prep it as well, but at the same time, there's kind of an agreement that if we're sitting down to play Star Wars, and then suddenly, we're not all going to get morphed into ponies.
Yeah, there's. I guess that's one of the ways where it's the tension. I think is possibly the most obvious is that tone is something that GMs are supposed to be able to set, but it's one of the more easier things to lose if the players decide that they are going to. Or even just one or two players decide, oh no, we're going to have a jokey time now. We're going to pull out the barrels of fish and, throw them at the guards type shenanigans.
Tone's a toughie, because I can tell you a joke, but I can't make you laugh, So I can attempt to set the tone, but I can either fail because I'm not hitting the right buttons, or you can just be non-receptive to it. Almost every Ravenloft game that I've played, despite the fact that everyone knows it's a Ravenloft game to begin with, has had at least one scene of utter absurdity. Because you can't keep that po-faced horror going indefinitely. And it's not desirable, but it's going to happen eventually. And I think as a GM, you just shrug your shoulders and go, and this is the comedy scene. And then you let people get that out of their systems, and then you steer it back toward where you want to go before next. But it does require cooperation. You can't make people feel things. You can invite them to come with you, but you can't force them,
Most horror films have a tension break moment or two, at least early on, because otherwise it's unbearable. You need to break it up occasionally. But you can't, I've played some very tense games. We played, old host of the show, Humbug, ran a Alien game for us over the break, and that was very tense, actually. It was quite the tension built very nicely, and the system supported, and that was all good. But it's sometimes food. It's not you couldn't handle that week on week. You just be like you become numb. You'd be like, oh, I just don't feel it. I just don't feel scared anymore.
We'd need the old school, stack of character sheets as well, because two of the party members got minced.
Absolutely.
We found out Owen was an android.
I was an android, but I wasn't a terribly bad android.
Bad robot.
You would have killed us all. Under the right parameters, you would have killed us all. That makes you a bad android. Well, a good android. A bad android. A good company android, but not a good android for anybody else.
Because I'm fundamentally a pessimist, and recent years have just turned me into more of one. I started this off with all the ways that your players can mess with your game. But there's a lot of reward as well from players going, do you mind if I detail this area in in greater lurid detail. I was trying to think of a word that wasn't detail there, but I couldn't. So that's where we are. So, like, I'm running D&D at the moment, and one of my players is like, do you mind if I chart my entire extensive family tree for the last 400 years? And I'm like, no, that's fine. And then when I need NPCs from that area, I'm just like, I've got little backstories for like 100 dwarves. I'm like, this is great.
This is your second cousin Spartlebam.
You laugh, but that's pretty close. He's got one cousin who's like a hippie druid dwarf. It's great. Crystal Star Song. But like, it can be a great source of stuff what's the word that I want? Creativity. Sorry, it's been a long day in the salt mines. It can be a great source of creativity, especially if it gels with your world. And I think what I've said to my players are, by all means, if there's something that's very jarring or doesn't work with the mythology or the history, I may have to edit it out, and I may not necessarily be able to tell you why, because I don't want to reveal too much of the plot. But it's been a great resource, I have to say, you know? It's not all doom, gloom, and stealing Strahd's clothes.
That damn near worked.
It's very shy, that Strahd, is he?
Look, I said, right, my thing was, I said, okay, I cannot defeat this man physically. He's too strong, he's too powerful, his vampire resilience is enormous, he's pummeling me in melee, he's draining my levels. I cannot beat him physically, but I can beat him mentally. And what we do is, we're in his wardrobe, we all put on his clothes. So the next time he hops out of something to confront him, I'm going to be get, don't you get it, Strahd? You're going mad. And in the confusion, we push him off a balcony or something. I don't know. I was like, we need to get an edge here that isn't, because I can't beat him numerically. I can't defeat this man. He's too strong. And every time he hits me, I lose a level.
I thought you were just going to be in this closet eating a hot dog or something like that, spilling mustard on all of his shirts.
I was trying to get inside his head to kind of win a psychological war, because I was not winning the melee war.
You were not.
Because every time he hit me, I lost. A level.
Actually, every time he hit you, you lost 2 levels. But nonetheless,
yeah, that was exactly the problem. So yeah, there was no winning. There was no winning that fight with fisticuffs.
So you'd have to go for mustard, because ketchup he could explain.
Is that ketchup on your cloak, Strahd? Of course not. It is blood. Is that mustard on your cloak, Strahd? Yes. Go away.
These yellow, crusty stains, focused entirely on the crotch. What has occurred, Strahd? I'm terribly embarrassed. I need to leave right now.
I see you've yet to find Tatiana.
Yeah, but how about rules, Shane? Who has ownership of the rules of the game?
That's probably the next good point. Is like, very often we'll see a situation where the GM is the one who will define what rules we're using. Well, okay, you start with the designer. The designer is the one who says, these are the rules in the book. This is the book, the package that we're delivering to you, and this is a number of rules. But it'll often be the GM who has final say of, well, we're going to change this rule, we're going to add this new subsystem I found on Reddit or whatever, and, you know, we're going to ignore that whole thing about alignments because I don't really gel with that whole thing, and so forth. But often, again, it will be the players that have the final vote over which of your rules are the ones that really get the most use and really get the wear and tear. Because they're the ones that are going to be choosing actions and therefore defining the focus of the game.
But what if the GM makes a stupid ass house rule that as a player you realise is just going to muck everything? How long do you sit there quietly stewing as stuff goes wrong? And you say, I know exactly the reason this is going on. You made that stupid house rule, and I'm going to have to very calmly explain it to you after... How many sessions do I wait before I explain it?
I now, wrong? Owen, wait between 1 and 3 seconds. That's as long as I wait now. If I spot something that's just a complete lemon, I'm just like, but if we do that, this will be the consequence. Because I'm absolutely all for informed changing of rules, but some of us are master storytellers and not master, rules people. And sometimes what sounds good in your head, when you say it, And if you've got a concrete reason where you're like, but this means we will miss 95% of the time, whilst our enemies with their enchanted tridents will kill us like fish in a barrel. I think if you have a legitimate, if you can just see how you think it's going to be a problem, immediately is the time to mention it.
Like, I'd lean towards immediately myself, but I've occasionally gone, I don't think this is a terribly good idea. I'll revisit this in 3 sessions when we've dealt with the fallout. But I'm just going to flag it right now. I don't want to undercut you. I don't want to basically be like, okay, you clearly, sir, are an idiot. But I don't want to start with that. We're just going to say, I think this is going to cause some problems, and let's watch for these few things. Oh, they all happened. My God, I'm a prophet. Listen... Let's roll back that rules change a little bit. Just, we try things, we learn, and we try things.
I have gotten less inclined to mess with rules as I've gotten older, unless they patently don't serve the function that they're supposed to. Because I am very aware that I am not a team of game designers. And thus, any choice that I make is probably going to be less well-informed than the people who put the game together and play-tested the damn thing. It used to be where I was like, haha, clearly this is dumb. I will change it. And then like that, you find yourself 2 or 3 sessions later going, all right, yeah, okay, fair enough. The little plug in the bottom of the boat was there to stop all the water coming in. That would explain why we're sinking.
I'm reluctant to make big changes unless it's apparent that it's really screwing things up. So I guess on my Warfare campaign, we're hitting reasonably high levels of XP, and the wizard is just annihilating it. It's basically everybody rolls initiative. The wizard kills 2 to 3 people, maybe 5 people every round, and then the fight's over. And the only challenge that there is there's another wizard on the other side who's doing the same thing.
Kill pointy hat.
So we've been looking at ways of bringing it down. But other than that, we've only been kind of tweaking around the edges at various points. So it's only really when there's obviously a big problem that I'll be quite inclined to change things.
Yeah, but is that going to be we could probably make the distinction between a problem that the game designers put in the game versus the problem that maybe a player has found a busted combo.
No, the player just optimized for look, he's a total glass cannon. He's got a fairly low toughness skill. He's got no real armor. If 5 guys shoot him with a bow, he's a dead heap on the ground. He's just really focused on his magic stuff, and that has meant that he's very powerful. And it's just the way the rules are. Rules as written, if you really focus on magic, then you are going to be very strong. So it's naturally the rules are like that.
As a GM running the Star Wars, whichever one it was, Legacy system, I think it was, I deliberately made the game more lethal by going, you can't spend force points not to die. And Owen was like, you realize this will make the game more lethal? I'm like, yep, and that's what I want. I want combat to be more lethal. But I knew what I was doing there. Now, I don't think everyone appreciated it, but I knew what the effect that I was generating was, and I knew what I wanted and why I was doing it, if you know what I mean. It was Saga, that was it, yeah.
No, that wasn't too bad in Saga. It was a factor. Yeah. Because I would always just say that's the reason they're there. It's like, you can change them, up to you, but I'm just saying, like, I would often give the feedback of, this is what that rule actually does. I'm just a slightly quizzical.
Yeah.
Do you understand that?
I was like, I do. I want you all to be afraid.
And my response would be, cool. That's all good.
Yeah.
That can be a GM decision, but I think there'll often be times where you might make decisions just to improve gameplay. And I think that should be more kind of a collective thing. So, like, again, with the Rupert game, I went, okay, well, straight up, the initiative is just whoever's got the highest initiative number, that's the order you go. That's a little boring. How about we go for the variant of you add a D10 to your roll a D10 and add that to your initiative score, and then that changes things up a little bit, And then there's also, by default in Wolf Report Ed, anyone who drops to 0 drops prone, and you eventually die when you have crits in excess of your toughness. And that can mean that a fight is settled and you still roll dice for half an hour or an hour while you just try and put the guys who are clearly out. And it is tedious. So now, if they're important when they drop to 0, then you have to put them down with crits. Otherwise, It's just like, well, whatever.
No, that makes sense.
Moves are down, fine. But that was collected. That was kind of agreed. Everyone was okay with doing that. It wasn't a diktat.
There is a time for some collaborative discussion. You're like, I'm not sure how much this affects you guys. This is a rules change I'm considering. Anyone freaking out? And I was like, no, that seems okay. You know, and you might make a change because you've spotted a problem. Because GM facing content and player facing content are a little bit different. For example, the GM will often see, God, my bad guys are pillow fisted. No one's died. And everyone's like, well, we're just about holding together here. This is great. And the GM's like, God, none of my guys ever do any damage. I really need to up the thing. And you can often be like, oh, well, we've been burning all our resources to not take that damage. It's like, okay, fair enough then.
It's one of the good reasons you should always play at least one game, because otherwise you tend to forget what it looks like on the other side of the table very quickly, you know?
I think this is something I've raised in a previous episode, was that it can often help, just for context's sake, that you can check what the original game designer's intent for a given rule was, if that's possible. And it's not always possible, because some of them are corporate faceless drones in the Oregon. Is it Oregon? No, it's Washington State. I'm getting sidetracked. But like, the idea is that if you can interrogate the design intent of the original designer, or figure out what their tone choice, like, were they going for a jokey tone? You know, sometimes they were intending on a more jokey, less serious tone, but they've written it in this grim, dark style. And, you know, it can be hard to interrogate, like, what was the intent here. It gives you a test that you can apply to, well, my game is more jokey than the norm intended for the game, but that's fine with me and my players, so we'll continue to massage things to keep that tone rather than the original designer's tone, for example.
There's some fascinating games archaeology you can do around that, where you can still occasionally talk to primary sources who played a game that first came out 40 years ago. Like, sometimes there was an interview with a guy who played with Gygax and Arneson in the original table games, and everyone said, and people just asked him some questions, and he had some, oh no, this is why that happened, you know. And there was one example where they said, why was gold pieces XP? That seems really stupid. And he said, oh, it was so you could catch up if you got killed. They said, what? He said, if your character died, you still have all his stuff. So you just sell it, and the next character you come along, you give the money to, and he trains up with the gold, and then he's back at not the same level, but nearly the same level. That was the reason it was there. And it was, it's all this stuff that is like, and you kind of go, oh, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And it's this stuff that gets lost in repeated rules iterations, where why is this sacred cow around? Oh, there's a reason, back there. Why is consume alcohol a skill in Woofrup? And it's like, oh, why do half of the characters have it? Because they always had it, and people get upset if they don't have it. Is it kind of silly? But Woofrup's a kind of silly, boozy game to a certain extent. Hey, landlord, another 5 points. Ho, ho, ho. Alcoholism's not a real problem. Glug, glug, glug. You know?
Look, Owen, you have to drink the ale. Look, you can't drink the water.
Woofrup's kind of a funny, jokey game, for the same reason that MASH was funny. If you're going to find yourself in an absolutely terrible situation, you may as well laugh at it, because there's nothing else you can do.
Yeah, but like, is that something that's made clear in the rulebook, or is it, you know, something that's inherited by GMs?
If you read through some of the design notes, and some of the design notes that are there for the current Cubicle 7 re-release of the Enemy Within campaign, kind of talk about a lot of the humor, and you can even, it's very funny because you look at a name like, one of the lords in the Rough Nights and Hard Days is Lord von Sapanatheim. It took me about 2 months to get that, and then just at one stage somebody said once upon a time. Oh, for God's sake!
But like, the halflings go to war firing hot pots at people. It's if the humor wasn't intended, what were they doing? Like, no. It's like, perhaps it was supposed, like, 40k is the po-faced grimdark, where it's like, if this is funny, it is by accident. But Fantasy Battle is this is some sort of grim English gallows humor, while we all rot slowly to death in the cesspool that is, you know, the Empire.
I bring it up, consume alcohol, because someone came along who'd never played any of the previous versions of Woofrup, or played any kind of Warhammer, and was from America, and was going, why does everyone have consume alcohol? What is going on? Nothing seems to use this skill. Why is this a big thing? You're like, oh, God, I gotta explain a bunch of context to you. This is why. And then the German guy comes along going, why is one of the bad guys in the campaign called Mr. Devil? Isn't that a bit obvious? They said, only if you speak German. Otherwise, flawless. No one's going to notice. No one's going to notice. Why is this stadium called the Bernabeu? That's a joke. Why is this crime boss called Idam Gouda? The big cheese. It was a little wackier back then. It was the 80s, man. Thatcherism was in. We were all drinking a lot.
Well, that's where what I find really funny about the Wolfrook stuff is stuff that was very topical. And now you're just like, man, I don't get that joke.
There is an argument apparently that Gazskell Mag Uruk is intended to be Margaret Thatcher, but said with a weird accent.
But yeah, it's stuff like that. It's like getting a little bit of context, and then that sort of informs, like if the group is the context and the GM is the context, that lets you make a call on, well, we're keeping this jokey tone, or we're playing it for a serious, or whatever have you. There is one other element I think we want to talk about, and this is possibly where maybe we get a bit more controversial. When is it okay to start complaining about the dice? Your randomizer, your little bit of fate or destiny, saying, no, that character's dead now.
My third one in a row is usually when my salt kicks in. Just usually,
Yeah, but you get systems that have resources or fate points or bennies or whatever rerolls you have system, and you have quite a few that have like dramatic clauses over dice, like you say. Well, the dice say you're dead, but this is a heroic game, so you're not dead unless you really think it's cool for your character to die here. But those are some examples.
I think if you really can't take, that 3 rolls in a row, like three 20s in a row, or, might kill, I think you really got to try and favor systems that allow re-rolls or mitigate it with rolling multiple dice at the same time. I know it sucks, and I played tons of Pathfinder, and I literally had it where, okay, Phantasmal Killer, roll a d20, oh, you're dead. Great. It happens, but I guess now I do prefer that you spend your fortune point and get to reroll. Oh, okay, well that still failed. Oh, well, you can take a corruption point and make a dark deal with one of the chaos gods. A system that gives that out.
One die roll probably shouldn't kill you, so having a certain amount of rerolls available to mitigate that is a good thing. People can be having a rough night in terms of rolling dice sometimes. And as the GM, it's good to have an out to go, you're not having fun right now because you're trying really hard and every roll is terrible.
You can't roll more than a 5.
Here's a meta resource so you have slightly less of a bad night. Because honestly, like that's the one for me, is like you sometimes you just have because you're rolling a relatively small number of dice, you can get a relatively rough series of, well, my last 3 turns have been me whiffing all my attacks. This has sucked. I have made no impact on the fight. And as a GM, having a tool there to go, here, have something. And as players never feel bad about mercy rerolls if you're having a really terrible series of dice. Like, yes, give it to me. Give me anything. I would spend anything for this to end.
I think you do need to have a random element. So whether it be, as a GM, the dice say, this doesn't go the way I thought it was going to. I think that's valuable, to be perfectly honest. I think if you have ultimate cosmic power, it's dull. As a GM, anyway. If everything goes the way that I have foreseen it, it is just me telling a bunch of people a story. It's boring. So I think from a GM point of view, I need randomization, both the random actions of my players, but also, oh, well, the bad guy fell over. Whoops. Just something like that to introduce some random chance to it. I do not think players should be dying to 1 die roll, or even 2 die rolls. Ron Seal's quick drying phantasmal killer does do exactly what it says on the tin, but it's a bit of a crappy experience if you're on the arse end of it, I think there should be an element of danger. I think there should be an element of randomness. I don't think there should be a huge element of danger. I don't think you should be in peril in every fight. And I don't think things should be so random that they're not consistent. But I think you do need to have them there. Otherwise it becomes predictable, and predictable is boring.
But I think this sort of thing sort of ties back into the ideas of system control and GM control. Because like most systems, assuming they're properly designed, will have mitigating factors to this. So, fail-safes, as it were. Like, there's no rule in Savage Worlds that say the goblin can't roll 30 damage on your starting character and just explode their head.
But you probably won't die from that in Savage Worlds. You'll go down, you might get a permanent injury, but you're probably not going to die. Like, there is a mechanism in Savage Worlds to stop a goblin one-shotting you. He might cut off your leg. Your new nickname might be Hoppy. But you're unlikely to die even from a single massive damage attack in Savage Worlds.
Save your bennies for the vigor roll. You ain't soaking that. You know?
That's true. And it's something that's become more and more clear as the editions have gone on. It's fairly explicit now, but it was maybe a little easier to imagine people insta-dying in earlier editions, but that was probably more from rule reading than from the being super lethal.
I can confirm that you're Will an alien.
Yeah. Also, old Call of Cthulhu. You've got 10 hit points. What happens at 0? Do I start rolling on it? You're dead. Guns do 1d10 plus 1, by the way, so good luck with the gunfight.
Just don't fight Liam's player's mage. I hear he kills 1d4 investigators around.
He does, he really does,
Well, there was that con game I played where I had 90 in rifle skill. When you have 90 in rifle skill, everything looks like a bullet shape. Everything looks like it has a bullet shaped problem that you can fix.
Yeah. So maybe that's where we go back into adjusting systems. Like, maybe you started off thinking that this was going to be, a nice, happy, go lucky game, and then someone rolls a 1 and the bad guy rolls a 20, and all of a sudden, their head's been lopped off, and you start thinking, well, maybe we should house rule in this nice little random chart of other things than dying at 0 hit points. Maybe that would get the tone a little bit close to what we're doing. It's a bit of that whole fixing the engine as it comes apart around you thing, but it might be something to do.
A player character shouldn't die in one roll, but also a player death is probably not the end of the world. You can often roll with it. You might have to say, depending on what's happening, let's time out here for a minute while I go figure out what to do next.
There's a thought there, actually. Well, maybe we'll go back around to the player thing. What if the player is perfectly fine, say, having the random death? Oh, I'll just bring in Timmy number 3. This time his gun is red. But GM's like, no, this the entire last 13 sessions of plot build-up have been destroyed. We can't just have Timmy 3 come in. Well, what are we going to do? You're in the middle of a desert, 57 light years from the nearest civilization. Where did Timmy 3 come out of? That kind of thing. I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I guess I'm sort of circling the drain in the final point is that there may not be a universally answer to this question of whose game is it anyway. Is that where we're...
It's a collaborative effort that is going to differ for every group. And the important thing is you should probably communicate with the other people in your group and work out what works for you.
Well, thanks, Graham. Now the episode's definitely over.
Well, we're 35 minutes in. We're grand saying, giving the actual answer now at the end,
Well, I guess we haven't discussed it. I thought we were going to discuss what say do the game writers and designers have and how their game is played.
They wrote a book, that's their say.
Precious little.
Would that be what I'd say? Oh, there's precious little, yeah.
The text that they have put in the book is their say in what happens. And it's if that's not enough to convince the GMs and the players and the dice, that's on them.
It's so intricate. You can't take away one thing without destroying everything. Take away one piece and it'll fall apart immediately. You can't change anything. And flee at the back.
Who wrote this? Martin Scorsese?
More or less, yeah. More or less.
Well, I guess you have heard it certain creative endeavors that somebody said, well, this is my creation and people can't toy with it. And I think I've probably more seen it with literature where people might have written their own fan stuff online, or maybe they have created shows, or things have been referenced and people can get kind of a little touchy about their material being messed with.
Has anyone actually seen the Fallout My Little Pony thing? Like, apparently they sell like leather-bound copies of this fan fiction.
My problem, no, it was Shadowrun. My Little Pony was what I had to play.
I know, but sorry, I guess you.
It sounds like somebody put a gun to your head here.
I have a special power. At WarpCon every year, I will play the worst RPG that has been put out there, the Lemon of WarpCon. consistently. If I go play a RPG or Warpgun, I will play the lemon. I will play the one that came out of the oven a little undercooked or overcooked, depending on the case, the one in case. You know,
They're all good RPGs, Brent.
no, they are not. No, they are not. I once was running a scenario where the players had to find a carpet seller in Egypt called Muhammad.
A specific one, or would anyone do?
A specific one.
Oh, well, that's a problem.
The scenario writer seemed to indicate just go ask for Muhammad, and I'm like, that is not how Egypt works.
One of the years we went to, I think it was Itzicon, and we ended up playing a Lord of the Rings game, and Owen got the most useless character in the entire world ever. He's laughing because he remembers it. And I was playing an elven archer who could shoot other people's. I was just so good at being an archer. I could shoot other people's arrows out of the sky. I could catch them. I was unstoppable. And I was like, "Greetings, mortals! I am a god sent to you from the west in order to help you with your problems." And Owen was, I think, a repentant ex-assassin who had no useful skills whatsoever.
Could he at least cook?
No, you see, the problem was I was still in the assassin class, but I'd been horribly injured trying to assassinate, I think, Faramir, and I had 9 dex as a result, and all of the assassin skills keyed off dex. So, at dex 12, you can move silently. At dex 14, you can do extra damage to people when you attack them. And I was like, I don't have any of these skills. You know, nothing works on my character sheet. It's fine.
Like a Deadlands archer or a guy with a long arm who then got the missing limb arm.
Yeah, the one-armed bandit hindrance. So yeah, my character was a repentant assassin who had no useful skills. So I played him like the dude in The Big Lebowski, and picked up a carpet early on in the adventure and carried my carpet and my shield around everywhere. And whenever I got in a fight, I went full defense with my shield, and I'm not fighting. I'm not using my skills to kill anymore. I'm just going to block and occupy one orc while Graham shot everyone with his bow, and I was just block, 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 block. Right at the end of the scenario, where you kind of the evil LV wizard, and I'm like, okay, cool. He's responsible for all this. Yeah, this is all his fault. Cool. And the GM's going, he casts his magic and he holds these people, and does this. And I go, okay, has he done anything to me? He's like, no, you've been just blocking your shield. I'm like, fine. I walk up to him. I throw the carpet on him. James like, fine, you throw the carpet over him. I kick him out the window. I said I didn't have much use for violence anymore. Not that I wasn't good at it.
The important thing is to get in quotes from Quigley Down Under, possibly the best Tom Selleck film of all time.
Yeah.
That was great fun. But Owen did legitimately get a completely useless character. That was his fault for fighting Faramir, who definitely showed his quality.
Absolutely.
But we can debate, I guess, whether that was the fault of a GM, a system designer, or a writer who was able to insert a little bit of his own expectations of his or her own expectations into the game.
We can debate it, but it was clearly the fault of the person who made the character an assassin with Dex 9.
Yeah.
That's who made that happen. That was nobody else.
But the backstory, Graham. The backstory.
That backstory was entirely me. But anyway.
But yes. So it seems that yes, there is no real answer, and you should probably talk to your players and your GM and everyone involved, and maybe look up what the drunken ramblings of all of their mistakes that the game writers will throw up on Twitter someday.
Well, it's definitely very interesting to see, certainly, what the game designer said. So, say, with the living history stuff, or even just, there are videos of game writers running sessions. And while I tend to find actual play a bit dull, it can be interesting just to see how they do it, how they run it, what tone they set.
I'd love to see John Wick run 7C 2nd edition, because I have no idea how to do it. So I'd like to see it.
That sounds like an excerpt from an Orson Welles bit, Owen. Show me how to do it. Just show me how to do it, and I'll buy a sandwich.
But yes, it seems that once again there is no answer. The answers are made up, and it's all fake anyway, or however that goes. But yes, if you'd like to debate and tell us whose game it is anyway, and how those treacherous players and treacherous dice need to be put in line by powerful GMs and powerful game designers, or the exact opposite of that, you can hit us up on our social media. But for now, this party is definitely over. Thanks for listening to The Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventurePTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike on Version 3 license.